Welcome back to Load the Box. We have one more show coming to you this week, the final week of February / the first week of March. Already, it's crazy that it's already March. March Madness is around the corner, so that's
Yeah.
something to get excited about, something to lose money over. And the NFL draft is not too far away either. Something that we want to do today, though, is look back. Look back at the first draft class that Kwesi Adolfo-Mensa and company pulled into Minnesota last season. We want to look today and see which of these guys should be making maybe the jump, that we like to see maybe in year 2 or year 3. And, this is year 2, so maybe high expectations, but also NFL rookie contracts aren't very long. They get 4 years, maybe 5 if they get the fifth year option picked up. And so if you want to make an impression with the team, you got to start making that impression in year 2 or 3. So some of these guys saw the field last year. Most of them did not. And so it's interesting. Jordan, I know many fans, especially in the Twitterverse, are very negative about the 2022 draft class, calling it a bust, saying Kwesi really, face planted with the draft. What are your thoughts maybe as a whole before we dive into each individual player?
Yeah, and I do want to. I like that we're starting with it as a whole before we go into each individual player. Because I want to try, we had I think 8 picks in the draft class, so I want to try and keep it kind of brief so that way we don't talk about it for like a full hour. But
yeah,
I mean, as a whole, it was banged up. Unfortunately, this season, the highlights of the draft class, it was probably Ed Ingram. Who did play every snap for the Vikings. He didn't. I don't think he missed a snap. He was healthy.
So.
He was an Iron Man, but he wasn't very good. In his first season, I don't want to just declare him a bust quite yet. Garrett Bradbury was not exactly good in his first season, and we held out hope because he was a first-round pick. I'm okay with giving Ed Ingram another season to see if he can maybe not stomp on Kirk Cousins' ankle 5 times in 2023. And then maybe, we'll look on him a little bit more fondly. So Ed Ingram, I think right now is the highlight, if you will. Other than that, it was banged up, and it was guys that we took in like the 6th and 7th round as depth pieces. Jalen Naylor had a couple of highlights from the draft class, as well as Brian Asamoah. So the jury's out. I'm not ready to declare it a bust just because we didn't have somebody make the Pro Bowl from it in year 1.
Yeah, absolutely. The previous couple drafts ago, you had a, the runner up for Rookie of the Year and, a Pro Bowler. And so when you have Justin Jefferson as one of the most recent draft picks, you kind of assume everybody else is going to have to pan out too that quickly. So I agree. It's way too early to say the draft class was a bust. Now, if these guys continue to be injured and not see the field, then we can have a different conversation. But I think it's way too early to be saying those sort of things.
Yeah.
Lewis Cine, he was our first pick, first round, pick 32. The Vikings drafted back the infamous, Jameson Williams, and we didn't pick Kyle Hamilton. He ended up being the best safety in the league. So a lot of scrutiny around Lewis Cine, to no fault of his own for all that stuff. And then he gets injured. He breaks his leg in London. What are you thinking? What are some realistic expectations for him in 2023?
Let me just say, because I don't know that I ever shared this story publicly on the show. When we traded back when Kyle Hamilton was there, I had one of those Soda Stick Co. skull hats with the K as Minnesota. I had one of those. I bought it years ago. I was wearing that hat. I had some buddies over, and I threw my hat into my kitchen, and I didn't get it, and my cats peed on it, which I thought was a bad omen for Lewis Cine as a draft pick.
Let's be honest here, though. Whose fault is that, Jordan? You're a grown man. You didn't have to throw your hat in the kitchen.
But it was just so. I was so because I my family is historically Notre Dame fans. And for some reason, I just have this idea that, if the Vikings draft someone from Notre Dame, it turns out well. Harrison Smith, Kyle Rudolph, those are the 2 prime examples.
Tends to work.
And so seeing, especially now with hindsight being what it is, seeing Kyle Hamilton be the best safety in the league really upsets me. But Lewis Seen, I'm not, I said that I didn't love the pick. I'm not completely out on the guy. He broke his leg. I mentioned earlier this week in one of the shows that I think this is the season where the Vikings have to make a decision. If Lewis Seen is not playing significant snaps this season, the Vikings don't think he's very good at football, and they made
Yeah.
they made a bad pick and they made the wrong choice. If he does play significant snaps, then we'll see how well he plays, when the PFF grades start rolling out and when we start watching him make or break plays. So I'm not out on Lewis Seen yet. I think the jury's still out.
Yeah.
And watching his film from Georgia, I mean, he is very athletic. And there's a reason I always
Yep.
call him Andrew Sendejo. He does, I mean, he hits, and he hits hard.
Yep.
And I kind of like that, but I also hate it in today's NFL. So we're still out
Yeah.
on Lewis Seen.
I mean, he's a walking highlight when he's healthy, and it's not like he's got a terribly long injury history, does he? I mean, he
No.
just had the freak accident last year in London, so breaking a leg isn't exactly something that you can prepare against unless you're
Nope.
LeBron James and have a bunch of calf muscles wrapped around your shins. But yeah, I just think that he's someone who I am so excited to see on the field. And I think from my perspective, and I talked about this in the other show, is my expectation for him is I want him to start. As long as they think him and Harrison Smith lined up next to each other is a scheme fit, and I'm not smart enough at football to know if whether or not Flores can make that work. But I want to see him start if he's healthy. I think Cam Bynum ain't it as far as I'm concerned, and Josh Metellus is a good backup. But I want to see what Lewis Seen can do starting. If he doesn't start, I'll be concerned if he's healthy. So, yeah, I mean, I think we're all
Yeah.
excited for Lewis Seen. It's just
We should be.
Jury is definitely still out. Yeah.
He's a first round pick. He has all of the talent and the athleticism in the world. He was one of the best parts of maybe the best defense in college football history. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, he's a high caliber player. I just wish that we could have seen him have more of an impact last season, and early in the season he didn't because of coaches' decisions, and then he got injured, so that kind of took the ball out of anybody's hands. So the next pick was Andrew Booth Jr., who, I hate to sound like the big draft nerd, I was in love with him out of Clemson. He is just the type of corner I love. He is long, he is tall, he is handsome. Like, he is just all the things you want in a boundary corner. Especially, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, in a Brian Flores defense where he can play up on you and he will shove you. And I'm looking at the picture that the Vikings posted of him when they selected him. And, it just looks like his arms never stop. I mean, he looks like Mr. Elastic from the Fantastic Four. It's just ridiculous. The raw talent and the raw, physical God-given abilities that he has. Now, he needs to be honed in and he needs to stay healthy. That was kind of his nitpick coming out of the draft was, hey, he can't really stay healthy. If he's healthy, he's really good. He gets banged up a lot, and we immediately saw him get banged up in training camp. And then he came back from that, and then he looked really bad. And I still think that was more scheme than it was player. But then he got banged up, and he was out for the season. So that's a huge if. I'm teetering on the bust already just because he's been banged up twice in a season, and that's not a good look for a guy who was banged up regularly at Clemson. So that's my 2 cents.
I've got some pretty big concerns about him. There are certain bodies that unfortunately are just not built to maintain an NFL rigor. It's like Tua. Tua is a good player when he's healthy, and when he played this year, the Dolphins were a real good team. But the guy will probably never stay healthy. It's just the way his body's made. And I'm not a kinesiologist or anything, but I think that could be something that we're worried about with Andrew Booth, and you're welcome for using kinesiologist on the show.
Beautiful. I need to get like I legitimately like we need to get like some special effects or something because I feel like it's once a week you pull out some wild from like you. I guarantee if you tilted your camera down, there's a thesaurus or a dictionary or something just sitting on your desk, and you're like, ooh, kinesiologist, that's a good one. I'll sneak that in there. Like,
But anyway, I'm worried about his health, and it's just it could just be the way of his career. It could just be one of those things where he's just not built for it. So
yeah,
one guy who I think we both agree is probably built for it is Ed Ingram. He played all 17 games. I don't think he missed a snap, like you said. Um, I have optimism for Ed Ingram. I am by no means. I mean, I tend to be a patient guy when it comes to these things. I'm not the fire everybody person after a bad loss or anything like that. I think he showed some moments. He was a better run blocker than he was pass blocker, which classic. It's the the Garrett Bradbury conundrum.
yep,
But um I mean he played all 17 games as a rookie, and I think he's got that football pedigree. He came from LSU, and so there's a lot to like about him in that regard, and more reps, he'll just keep getting better, you would imagine. So with any sort of, interior offensive lineman that the Vikings have had ever, I have cautious optimism. I'm not, oh my gosh, he is Christian Darrisaw good, or, he's going to be, the next great. I think you mentioned Steve Hutchinson. I think, or no, that was Oli Udo. Never mind. That was Oli Udo from the last show. But
yeah.
I think Ed Ingram, my expectations are that he'll start all 17 games again. And I think he'll be a better player than he was last year.
Yeah, I think that he'll take a step forward. The question is it going to be like a long step or is it going to be like a tiptoe? And
Sure.
if it's a tiptoe, as long as you have your center position figured out and your worst offensive lineman is Ed Ingram, we can all just chirp about how bad Ed Ingram is. The issue arises whenever you have Ed Ingram lining up next to like a really bad center, and then your interior offensive line is completely compromised. And so that's kind of what it is. I kind of mentioned earlier on the show about him. I kind of talked about him being the highlight of this draft class so far. I mean, I'm okay with him starting this year.
Yeah.
We see what we do. Well, we see what he does. If he does take a large step forward, cool. We have a guard that we don't have to pay much money for the next couple of seasons. If he's the same guy, okay, get a new one. Do the same thing you did with Ed Ingram. Draft a guard in the second round and try again. Like it's all you can do. You don't have the money to go sign these giant name free agents, and I don't know that you necessarily want to pay top dollar for your guard, especially if you have Cousins on the roster. And money is tight in Minnesota. Let's talk about a guy who he's kind of, I don't want to say he's controversial, but he's the topic of a lot of discussion towards the end of the season and now in the offseason. He's kind of like the guy on the defense, and that's Brian Asamoah. I think everyone already has him penciled in. He's the starting linebacker for the Vikings. He might be the longest tenured Vikings linebacker next season, with 1 year of experience under his belt. With the Vikings anyway. Like I think he showed a lot of flash when he was on the field. What do you think of Brian Asamoah? I'm a fan. I think he's going to pan out and be a successful linebacker in the NFL. What do you think?
I think he was one of the guys that Brian Flores was dreaming about when he signed with the Vikings. He's a physical specimen. He is all about, like, he is all aggressiveness and energy and youthful enthusiasm, and you rein a little bit of that youthfulness in and teach him a thing or two about playing NFL football. I think you got a starting caliber linebacker for the next half decade. I really like him. I think every time I saw him on the field, I wanted to see more of him on the field. His speed, his ability to, make up for mistakes is huge. So I love him. I think my expectation for him is that he's starting, and he'll be starting next to a semi-veteran free agent signing. That's my expectation.
Yeah, I think I 100% agree with you on that. Like I said, I mean, I think we're in agreement. The future is very
Yeah.
bright for Brian Asamoah, and I'm a big fan of him.
Yeah.
Let's talk about another guy who this coaching staff. Sorry, I think I'm taking the reins on this one. I'll let you get the next like six. But what's your opinion on a Caleb Evans who played pretty well ish? He wasn't elite. He wasn't Duke Shelley good, but
No.
he was all right. He was a Caleb Evans good, and then he got concussed like 17 times. It felt
Yeah.
like over the span of a month. Does that worry you going forward into 23? Do you think that's just a freak thing? Like it was just coincidence that he got 3 concussions this year?
I think concussions tend to be coincidental at the beginning of your concussion history, but when you continue to have more of them, you're more likely to get another one because you're just more sensitive to it. And so that's a concern for sure. But I mean, a lot of football players unfortunately have had a lot of concussions, and it doesn't necessarily mean that, your career is going to be over because of it. So I really like a Caleb Evans. I've been on the hype train kind of ever since he got his first real snaps. Even in preseason, I loved his I'm going to stick my nose in there in the run game mentality and not really care about, you know, my feelings, and I'm going to get up in there and I'm going to be aggressive and I'm going to make a play. He
Yeah,
made a lot of individual tackles in the run game in the preseason when he got more snaps, and even when he did play in the regular season, that was something I continued to love. That Washington game, when he stepped in, he made a great pass breakup on fourth down, multiple individual tackles in space in the running game against some shifty backs. I really like him. I don't know if everybody's with me on this one. He's a fourth round pick. Um, there was some, positives and minuses from his college career, but he's a guy that he soaked up everything Patrick Peterson had to say, and he's always smiling. He's a social media, darling in Minneapolis. That doesn't make him a better player, but the personality and the enthusiasm, I really like the player. I think he's going to continue to grow and get better. Now, I don't think he starts just because I think, if you have Duke Shelley back and he continues to play like he did, he probably gets a starting nod. And then potentially, if the Vikings do bring in a free agent or get a first round pick this year, maybe he gets the start on the opposite side or whatever. I just think there's maybe too many guys ahead of Evans, at least in the depth chart, to where he probably won't start. I mean, one of those guys could be Andrew Booth. So I think he'll get significant snaps, though. Cornerbacks are always getting hurt, as Mike Zimmer likes to say. And I think Evans will be back. Well, obviously he'll be back, but I think he will have a significant role. And as long as he doesn't, bang his head up a few more times, I think he'll play well. I really like the guy.
yeah. I wonder what it is that makes some guys just more susceptible to a concussion than others. Like I wonder if it's just like
Yeah.
you like this is gonna sound stupid, but like you learn to fall at a certain age, I think, and you kind of learn how to like brace yourself and where to land on your back, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. And I wonder if it's like something like that. Like I don't know. I feel like I'm interested in becoming whatever that big word you used earlier was, and learning more about like what makes guys more susceptible to one concussions and two just injuries in general. Because like I
Yeah.
broke my wrist once, and I think my sister-in-law has broken like both of her wrists 18 times. Like it's ridiculous how many. Like it's just like what causes this? Like why are your bones soft and mine not?
Yeah.
Or mine are soft and yours. I don't know. I don't know how it works. Whatever. This
Yeah.
isn't. Well, I'm off topic. Let's
Do you have any
you take
thoughts
this.
on do you have any thoughts on Azazie Tomoa?
I
He was
don't.
a, fifth round pick from Minnesota. I think he played fine when he saw the field, but he didn't see the field much.
Yeah, Joey's still out.
Yeah.
I
I
like
mean,
yeah.
for fans who aren't as plugged into the team, Azazie Tomoa was a fifth round pick out of the University of Minnesota. He played defensive line, defensive end. I don't really know what they call him in a 3-4. I think technically it's a defensive end, but interior defensive line. He's not a nose tackle, but he's also not an edge rusher. So
Yeah.
he got some snaps late in the season. Played fine, but I don't think anybody's expecting him to really make a huge splash on the roster. But we'll see. We'll see what happens with the roster construction after some of the free agency and stuff settles out. So the next guy the Vikings picked was late 5th round, Ty Chandler. I think a lot of people expect him to potentially be the starting running back next year. What do you say?
Yeah, I think I agree. As of right now, anyway, I mean, look, every time I do a mock draft, I typically find myself taking running back in like the fourth or fifth round.
Yeah.
But if the Vikings don't go that route, even if they do go that route, it might be Ty Chandler as the one and a rookie TBD as the 1B, if that makes sense. And I think Ty Chandler showed a lot in preseason. A lot of Vikings fans were like, holy cow, Dalvin Cook, Alex Madison, and Ty Chandler. That's going to be like a three-headed beast of a running back room in 2022. And it kind of just turned into the same old Vikings running back backfield of Dalvin Cook and then Alexander Madison whenever Cook was tired or banged up or whatever the case may be. So I think Chandler should be considered. He has high expectations. I think he showed a lot in preseason. I think he'll show out in preseason this season. I'm excited to see what he does this 2023 regular season. Maybe he gets on the field some.
I'm really excited about him. A thing that he was praised for, or one of his strengths, was his speed, which is definitely there. But he showed a lot of power that I don't think he was given credit for, at least leading into the season. In the preseason games when he was lining up back there, it was either him or Kane Wongwu. Kane is sort of a flex running back sort of feel, like give him a handoff here or there, but he's going to be more of a pass catcher. Just get him in space, let him run around people. Ty Chandler is speed, but he's also got power. He was initiating contact, welcoming it, and running people over. So I really like him. I'm excited to see what he can bring next year. Do you have any thoughts on Vidarian Lowe? I'm assuming not.
No, we talked about Ali Udo coming back, and I kind of forgot about Vidarian Lowe, so I'm going to amend my cheap comment for him yesterday as like, let Ali Udo go. Vidarian Lowe is your backup tackle now. Congratulations, Vidarian. You are a backup tackle in the National Football League, and I actually think you're more like a third string. I also just want to clarify very quickly, you said something about Ali Udo and Steve Hutchinson earlier. If you didn't watch yesterday's video, I did not say Ali Udo is Steve Hutchinson.
No.
I said Vikings fans acted like Ali Udo was going to be Steve Hutchinson, and that was a lot of weight to put on the poor guy's shoulders, because whenever he wasn't that good, we were all just shocked and appalled. Yeah. And so I meant to clarify that earlier, but I do not want my name strapped on the Ali Udo is Steve Hutchinson take that never was.
Cold takes or old takes exposed.
Freezing cold takes
things on Twitter. So probably the last person we want to talk about would be Jalen Nailor. I think we probably both agree Nick Muse is going to be a depth piece at tight end. He was our last pick of the draft last year. Our mystery irrelevant, as if you will. But Jalen Nailor, we picked him in the 6th round. The whole wide receiver 2 debate is alive and well. Jalen Nailor will be on the roster next year, unless there's some strange trade. What do you expect from the former Michigan State Spartan, who also, interestingly enough, also wore number 8 at Michigan State, like a current Vikings quarterback did?
Kellen Mond? No, wait, no, he plays for the Browns.
Come on, man. Kirk Cousins played quarterback for the Michigan State Spartans.
No, of course. And he wrote in his book that he threw a pick against Notre Dame, and the Skull North guys won't let you forget about that quote that he had in a book he wrote in 2012. But Jalen Nailor, to me, I feel like I haven't seen a ton of hype, but like just looking at him and thinking about him, I'm like, my default instinct is, oh, maybe he could be wide receiver 2. No, he's not wide receiver 2. Wide receiver 2 is not on this team right now. We need an elite wide receiver 2. Jalen Nailor is an elite gadget guy who can be wide receiver 4. He can come in if wide receiver 1, 2, or 3 gets banged up. He steps up into the starting rotation and he gets to run routes and he gets to play. And if we go 5 wide, he gets to play. But I'm not about oh, let's just say wide receiver 2 is going to be KJ or Jalen Naylor. We'll figure it out in training camp. I think he showed some promise. But, like, let's not act like he was catching crucial passes on 4th down against Buffalo or Green Bay or in these big-time games that we had. He was catching garbage time passes when we got blown out, which happens shockingly a lot for a 13-win team. But Jalen Naylor, I think he is a solid piece of a great wide receiver room that is going to be a great wide receiver room once we get, like, I don't know, Zay Flowers in here or somebody like that. Yeah. Like, or maybe even Alan Lazard is wide receiver too. Yep. But Naylor is he was a 6th round pick. I am already satisfied with Jalen Naylor as a 6th round pick because he's going to be here for the next 3 seasons. And he's going to be like, okay, yeah, if he has to step up, he's all right. He's not elite, but he's all right. And that's what he should be. He's a 6th round pick.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, if he can make a play like you were talking about earlier this week, if he can make a play in an end around or a jet sweep or something once every 3 games, pick up a 4th down and 1, like those jet sweeps that we'd have KJ run, maybe we give Jalen Naylor some of those once in a while. Or, I mean, I
don't want to cut you off, but I think the perfect, swap for him is Jalen Ruego. Like the gadget plays we had for him and the occasional deep shots we had for him, give those to Jalen Naylor because Jalen Ruego didn't impress anybody this season. I would rather see Naylor in that spot. And you said end around, and I thought that's where you were going with it. And I just wanted to point that out because I think we were in like 3 or 4 end arounds this year with Jalen Ruego. Give those spots to Naylor. Like it's weird because they sound similar, but it'll make sense. I promise.
All the Jalens. There's just too many Jalens in this generation.
There are too many Jalens.
Sounding like an old man.
It's a popular name.
It is a very popular name. Yeah, and I mean, like we talked about earlier this week, special teams. He was actually a good special teamer. He's a good threat to have when Ryan Wright decides to throw the ball too. Kind of like that option. But maybe the last thing I'll say, and then I'll let you close down the shows for the week, is I want to see Jalen Naylor be wide receiver 4, and I want and this is strictly roster construction speaking. I want the Vikings 4 wide receivers to be Justin Jefferson, enter wide receiver 2 here, KJ Osborne, and Jalen Naylor. And if Rager comes back as a punt return specialist, that's fine. But the second wide receiver, unfortunately, it's not Adam Thielen anymore. I love the guy. It would be sad to see him go, but it's in terms of roster construction, you got to take your emotions out of it a little bit. I would say let Thielen go. Make a deal to get rid of him, and in that sense, I want to see Naylor see a few more snaps on the field as the 4th option.
I am legally, I think, required to say this by my wife that loves humor like this, but I do have to say Naylor, I hardly know. Zingo! Yay, we did it. But no, legitimately, I love the take that you just had. It should be Jefferson, TBD, KJ Osborne, Jalen Naylor. Jalen Ruego didn't impress. Like I said, he didn't impress me. I think Naylor can. No. A big theme of yesterday's show was like, I think we could draft a guy who could do this. So I think this guy could do this guy's job for cheap, so we should get rid of this guy. And so I think Naylor can do what Ruego did for less money. And yeah, Ruego can stay on as like a punt return specialist, and Ruego can be the guy who comes in if we're getting blown out. But I don't know. I just have this thing stuck in my head where Jalen Ruego stopped on that deep route against, I believe it was that the Colts?
Indianapolis.
Yeah, against the Colts. We still win the game, but like that really felt like the play that was going to lose us the game, and it was solely on Jalen Ruego. And, some people were going to say, well, that's actually Kirk Cousins' fault. Why is he throwing it to Jalen Ruego in that spot? Blah, 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 blah. No, it wasn't his fault. It was his fault that we won. I'll give you that much, but PFF said that was only worth like a 50 grade, which I don't know. I guess that makes sense because we played badly in the first half. Whatever. 2022 is behind us. We're a quarter of the way to Christmas. Think about that for a second because it is March.
Strange things.
It's crazy. Time flies when you're having fun, when you're just building a Super Bowl roster like the Minnesota Vikings are doing. I've been Jordan Hawthorne. You can follow me and the show on Twitter at LTB Vikings. He's been Will Goodwin. You can follow him on Twitter at Will Badlose. He does have the GOAT Twitter handle. You should always shop. Let me use my other hand. You should always shop. Let me get it into frame. Good night. Shop Unified Athletic Wear for all of your athletic wear needs, as well as just some clean designs. And check out VikingsTerritory.com and the Bad Loser blog. That's all we have from you this week. And this is the dramatic pause part, or the dramatic part. We are taking a break. We're on a break. We're going to go. We're going to, live in separate houses. We're going to see how we feel about each other. And we're going to come back. Legitimately, we're taking a break for just personal reasons. We'll be back in like 2 weeks. Like, it's not going to be that long. But I might do like a mock draft, like that comes out on Mondays or something for the next couple of weeks, just to keep you guys satisfied. But it's the off season, man. It's time to start working on the golf game. Start hitting the greens, start talking about baseball. It's that time of year. I watched basketball all day on Sunday. It was kind of cool. So a little bit of a pullback here, but still gonna get you some content. And other than that, I'll leave you like we always do with a skull, y'all.